Running for weight loss learning objectives. 1. Name 3 reasons why running is so effective for weight loss. 2. Define a calorie and its role in human energy production. 3. Describe 6 strategies for burning more calories with running. 4. Describe the 3 macronutrients and their roles in the body. 5. Name the most pertinent micronutrients any runner should be consuming adequate amounts of. Not all people who run want to get faster or run races. Some people run to enhance their moods, while others have the goal of losing weight or changing their body composition. There are 3 major reasons why running is so effective for weight loss. 1. When we run, we create an environment where there is a great need for energy. We lower our carbohydrate fuel tank, we damage muscle tissue, and we increase body temperature. We create unbalance. After we finish running, these things have to return to their pre-exercise state to recreate balance. The metabolic priorities of muscle following a workout are the replenishment of glycogen, the repair of damaged muscle tissue, and the synthesis of new structural and functional proteins. If we don't run, there is never a drain on muscle glycogen, nor any muscle tissue to repair or build, nor any reason to make new proteins, so any calories we consume that are not used to meet our muscles' metabolic needs or repair and build muscle tissue are stored as fat. If we don't want our calories to be stored as fat, we need to create the opportunity for those calories to be used for fuel. 2. Running uses many muscles. All the muscles in our legs, quadriceps, hamstrings, hip flexors, abductors, adductors, glutes, calves, and the muscles in the front of our shin are used at different points in the running stride. Even our abdominal muscles and the muscles in our shoulders are used a lot, from swinging your arms back and forth thousands of times during each run. Running is a whole body activity. The more muscle we use, the more oxygen we use, and the more oxygen we use, the more calories we burn. 3. Running is weight-bearing. Every time our foot lands on the ground, our leg absorbs 2 to 3 times our body weight. Multiply that number by the number of steps someone takes to run 5 miles and multiply that by how many times the person runs each week, and you can see how much stress the legs have to deal with, especially if the person is overweight. Because it's threatening to the body's survival to have all that stress on it, our bodies will do what they need to do: shed weight, to alleviate the stress and minimize the threat to protect itself. These 3 principles are why running is so effective for weight loss. Running, with its huge calorie burn, is one of a weight loss hopeful's best chance to create an environment for change. There are many other fitness-related activities that don't use as many muscles and are not as weight-bearing as running, but they do not bear the same burden of stress, so people don't lose weight as quickly. Running to burn calories, we can actually calculate how many calories someone burns when they run. To do so, we have to know a few things first, including body weight, time spent running, the person's fitness represented by the person's maximum aerobic power and running intensity. Let's take the example of a 180-pound female in her 40s with a maximum aerobic power VO max left parenthesis VO2 max right parenthesis 1. Body weight equals 180 pounds 2. Time spent running equals 30 minutes 3. VO2 max equals 35 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute 4. Percent VO2 average during the run equals 70% 5. Number of calories used per liter of oxygen consumed equals 5 calories. Using the above sample numbers, we do some math and find that 301 calories are burned when a 180-pound female with a VO2 of 35 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute runs for 30 minutes at 70% of her VO2, 0.7 times the ratio of 35 milliliters over kilograms per minute times 30 minutes times 8, 2 kilograms times the ratio of 1 liter over 1,000 milliliters times the ratio of 5 calories over 1 liter, O2 equals bold symbol 301 calories. This explains that if this person runs 3 times per week for 30 minutes at 70% VO2, which is a relatively comfortable run, she'll burn 900 calories per week. If she combines the 900 calories burned per week with consuming 300 calories less per day, she'll have a weekly caloric deficit of 3,000 calories. At this rate, she'll lose 0.8 pound per week. The equation also tells us how to burn more calories from running. Starting from the left side of the above equation, the following factors can be modified to increase calorie burn. 1. Run at a higher percentage of VO2 max. 2. Increase VO2 max. 3. Increase the amount of time spent running. 4. Increase body weight. Although heavier people burn more calories when they run, obviously the last option can be ignored since the goal is weight loss, not weight gain. Calories, the amount of energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius at a pressure of 1 atmosphere. Negative energy balance, more energy is expended than consumed over time and weight loss occurs. Positive energy balance, more calories are consumed than expended over time and weight gain occurs. Energy balance, the number of calories consumed and expended are consistently equal and body weight is maintained. The first option, run at a higher percentage of VO2, an option because running at a higher intensity will detract from the amount of time they can run, since the faster a person runs, the shorter she can hold the faster pace. Increasing the intensity only works if they can sustain the higher intensity for the same amount of time. That leaves us with the second and third options, increasing VO2 max and / or increasing the amount of time spent running. Both of those ways are effective for increasing the number of calories burned, but the second method, increasing VO2, enables the person to burn more calories in the same amount of time, and it enables them to be more physically active because they are more aerobically fit. Knowing how many calories a person burns on their runs is important because it enables them to more carefully monitor their caloric intake, which is the other half of the weight loss equation. You can also look at it the other way: how much a person needs to run to burn off the calories they consume. Calories and metabolism, the principles of weight loss. The many authors and publishers of diet books that crowd bookstore shelves and take up all that virtual space with online retailers would have the public believe that weight loss is a complicated problem that only their book can solve. However, weight loss is actually quite simple in theory. The fundamental determinant of body weight is caloric balance. Our body weight is determined by the number of calories we consume through eating and drinking minus the number of calories we expend through physical activity. We use calories all the time. Every time we contract a muscle, either voluntarily or involuntarily, we use calories because muscles need energy to work. Our other organs, heart, kidneys, liver, pancreas, brain, and all the others also use calories to carry out their varied functions. To lose weight, we have to expend more calories than we consume. This is known as a negative energy balance. The opposite would be a positive energy balance, and someone who maintains their body weight is simply an energy balance. How many calories? Well, a rather large amount. For every pound of weight we want to lose, we need to expend approximately 3,750 more calories than we consume. That's a number that has been researched, is backed by evidence, and is worth remembering. If we want to lose 10 pounds, we need to expend 37,500 more calories than we consume. Left parenthesis, 3,750 times 10 equals 37,500 right parenthesis. Despite the claims of books and infomercials, sustained weight loss actually occurs slowly, 1/2 to 2 pounds per week. It's simply a matter of math. To lose weight at a more rapid rate, we would have to severely cut back on the number of calories we consume and exercise all day long to achieve the caloric deficit we would need to lose weight faster. That doesn't mean we can't lose weight more rapidly than at the rate of 1/2 to 2 pounds per week, but we have to be realistic. The rate at which we lose weight depends on a number of factors, not the least of which is how much we weigh to begin with. If someone weighs 180 pounds, it's a lot harder to lose weight rapidly than if they weigh 300 pounds. When we understand how large of a caloric deficit it takes to lose just 1 pound, the magical 3,750 calories, it becomes clear why those weight loss books and infomercials promising big weight loss numbers are misleading and even wrong, and why it's hard to lose weight at a faster rate. Losing 1/2 to 2 pounds per week will require time and perseverance to reach our target weight. But that's okay, because despite our instant gratification society, humans evolved to persevere. It's why running a marathon has become so popular around the world. Humans like the results that come from perseverance. So tell your clients not to quit just because they haven't lost 5 pounds this week. Patience is more than just a virtue when it comes to weight loss. It is the pathway to success. In our society, there's a lot of commotion about calories. They're everywhere we turn, in the news, on food labels, in menus. We are consumed figuratively and literally with calories. So, what's a calorie? A calorie is a measurement of energy. Specifically, it's the amount of heat energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. It's most commonly used by nutritionists and dietitians to measure the amount of energy contained in the chemical bonds of the nutrients in food. Every food label includes the number of calories energy per serving in terms of weight loss and weight gain. A calorie is a calorie. All calories are created equal as far as human physiology is concerned. Body weight is about energy balance, and each calorie contains a specific amount of energy. There is no debating that, yet every weight loss and fad diet guru and celebrity health nut wants to debate it. The definition of the calorie and the relationship between energy and matter, including muscle and fat, is subject to the laws of thermodynamics. A calorie is a calorie, just like gravity is gravity. In terms of energy balance, it makes no difference whether a calorie is from a carrot or from carrot cake. The quantity of calories we consume matters. It's the principal determinant of what the scale reads when we stand on it. The reason why running is so effective for weight loss is because running is one of the best and fastest ways to expend those calories. Every mile we run burns about 110 calories, give or take, depending on how much we weigh and our running economy I.E. How much oxygen our bodies use to run at a given pace. The more we weigh, the more calories we'll actually burn every mile or kilometer because it takes more oxygen and more energy to transport a heavier weight than it does to transport a lighter weight. The energy cost of running is approximately 0.73 calories per pound of body weight per mile. Thus, a 120-pound person burns about 88 calories per mile, while a 200-pound person burns about 146 calories per mile. Our muscles can't directly convert calories from the food we eat into the energy needed to move our bodies. As human physiology teaches, the energy for movement comes from the chemical breakdown of a high-energy metabolic compound in your cells called adenosine triphosphate ATP. When the strong chemical bonds of ATP are broken, heat and energy are liberated and muscles contract. ATP is used for all activities, including running. In fact, the breakdown of ATP is necessary for every single movement we make, from blinking our eyes to running a marathon. Since our muscles don't store much ATP, we must constantly resynthesize it before breaking it down. The formation and resynthesis of ATP is thus a circular process. ATP is broken down into its constituents adenosine diphosphate ADP and phosphate P, which then recombine to resynthesize ATP. The calories contained in carbohydrate, fat, and protein are used to synthesize ATP through many chemical reactions to meet our cells' large need for energy to perform different tasks. But what if it's a slow day at the office and our cells don't need a lot of energy? What if we already have enough ATP lying around in our cells to meet their needs? When we consume carbohydrate, fat, and protein, where do the calories go? Here's a general breakdown. Following the left arrow in the diagram, we can see what carbohydrate, fat, and protein are used for in our bodies. As the matching colors show, carbohydrate is used for fuel by our muscles and exists in our body in two forms, glucose in our blood and glycogen in our muscles and liver. Any carbohydrate that we eat is used to replenish blood glucose and muscle and liver glycogen. Protein is used to build things like muscle tissue, enzymes, and other parts of cells that carry out specific functions. Fat is an important component of cell membranes and is used as a fuel, insulation, and to protect our internal organs. Where things go awry is when we follow the right arrow in the diagram. If our bodies don't need to carry out the functions to the left, all of the extra calories from carbohydrate, fat, and protein follow the path of the right arrow and are stored as fat. Your client and the other billions of people in the world are overweight because the calories they consume follow the path of the right arrow. It's as simple as that. The big secret to not gaining weight is to never go down the path of the right arrow. How do we do that? We must create an environment that forces the calories to follow the left arrow. Running lowers our carbohydrate fuel tank, which creates a metabolic demand because carbohydrate is the muscle's preferred fuel. Lowering that fuel tank is threatening to the survival of our muscles, so any carbohydrate we eat will be used to refill the tank. The synthesis and storage of glycogen, the refilling of the carbohydrate fuel tank, is controlled by the hormone insulin and the availability and uptake of glucose from the blood. Through its effect on specific proteins that transport glucose, insulin draws glucose from the blood into muscle cells to be stored. The glucose is then used to make new glycogen. The higher the blood insulin concentration and the greater the availability of glucose, the faster glycogen is synthesized and stored. The same partitioning happens with protein. When we run, we send a signal to build structural and functional proteins, and we cause microscopic damage to the muscle fibers. So the amino acids from any protein we eat will be used to build those structural and functional proteins and repair the damage to the muscle fibers to make them stronger and more durable. How calories are used is all about how they are partitioned. The trick is knowing how to direct the partitioning. If we are always mobilizing energy for it to be used, we're not storing it as fat. If we don't want the calories we eat to be stored as fat, we must create a metabolic demand so that the calories are used for other, more important needs. Metabolism 101 in 1780, Frenchmen Antoine-Laurent Lavoisier and Pierre-Simon Laplace were the first scientists to study metabolism. Their experiments with guinea pigs in a calorimeter, a device for measuring heat energy that is sealed off to the outside environment, quantified the oxygen consumed and carbon dioxide produced by metabolism by measuring how much heat the guinea pig produced, using the amount of oxygen consumed and carbon dioxide produced by the guinea pig, DRS. Lavoisier and Laplace could calculate the metabolic rate, how many calories the guinea pig was using to sit and do normal guinea pig things while inside the enclosed environment of the calorimeter. Metabolism is one of those buzzwords that people often talk about but don't really understand. Pick up any fitness or weight loss book at a local bookstore and the word metabolism is all over the pages. Hollywood personal trainers are quick to act like they are metabolism experts and say a lot of things about metabolism that simply are not true. Metabolism is the sum of all chemical reactions in living cells by which energy is provided for vital processes. It's an enormously complex subject. Adding the condition of exercise makes the understanding of metabolism even more complex. However, understanding the basics of metabolism and how and under what circumstance is it liberates people from the constraints of fad diets and dietary and exercise misinformation. They'll understand how much running they need, at what intensity they need to run to lose weight, and how to manipulate their diets to support their new running habit and change their body composition. When we run, metabolic rate increases dramatically from what it is when we're sitting at a desk. The best runners in the world, who consume oxygen at very high rates when running fast, can increase their metabolic rate as high as 25 times its resting value. A person of average fitness can increase their metabolic rate about 10 to 15 times from what it is at rest. This increase is linear with increasing exercise intensity. The faster we run, the more our metabolic rate increases, in part because our muscles increase their demand for oxygen so they can continue to maintain the speed. In response to this increased demand for oxygen, our heart rate and stroke volume, the amount of blood the heart pumps with each beat, both increase to send more blood and oxygen to our muscles. Also, the vessels just below our skin dilate and more blood is sent to our skin to increase our ability to cool ourselves as our body temperature rises. And our diaphragm and other breathing muscles work harder since we breathe heavier to exhale the carbon dioxide that starts to build up in our muscles and blood from the increased intensity of the run. These are all energy-requiring processes which collectively raise our metabolic rate. When we exercise, we use a combination of two fuels to supply energy for all of the energy-requiring process, is fat and carbohydrate. Protein, the third major macronutrient, accounts for only about 5 to 10% of energy production during exercise, and so is usually neglected as a fuel source. Rather, proteins are primarily used in building, maintaining, and repairing muscle, skin, and blood tissue, and aid in the transportation of materials through the blood. However, the body's requirement for energy takes priority over tissue building, so protein can be used as an energy source if there are not adequate amounts of fat and carbohydrate like in the case of low-carb diets. Humans store fat in two major places, triglycerides directly beneath the skin adipose tissue and within the muscles intramuscular triglycerides. Humans also store fat around their internal organs for their protection. A human store of fat is virtually unlimited, even in very thin people, with enough to fuel about 5 days of long-distance running or about 1,000 miles of walking for a 145-pound person with 18% body fat. While people would love to see their belly shrink while running on the treadmill, most of the fat that's used when running is of the intramuscular triglyceride variety, since the fat stored inside the muscles is physically closer to the mitochondria, where it's ultimately used for energy, and so is therefore more efficient to use. It's during the rest of the day, when the person is not running, that fat is lost from the adipose tissue in other parts of the body. Humans also store carbohydrate in two places, in the blood as the sugar glucose and in the skeletal muscles and liver as glycogen, which is a branched chain of glucose molecules. We use both of these sources of carbohydrate when we run. Unlike our unlimited store of fat, we have enough stored carbohydrate in our muscles and liver to provide enough energy for only about 100 minutes of sustained running at a moderate pace. At slow running speeds, some of carbohydrate's metabolic responsibility for energy production is relieved by fat, in the form of free fatty acids in the blood and intramuscular triglyceride. Even with the contribution of fat helping to delay the depletion of glycogen, we can sustain a moderate pace for only 2 to 3 hours. When someone runs for a prolonged period of time, blood glucose gets very low and the muscles and liver can become depleted of glycogen. When blood glucose or glycogen stores become low, insulin concentration decreases, and fat metabolism predominates, with adipose tissue releasing large quantities of fatty acids into the blood so they can travel to the muscles and be used for energy. While a greater use of fat when glycogen depleted is often used as an argument to recommend running in a glycogen-depleted state, like first thing in the morning before breakfast, what's missing from this argument is that in order to oxidize fat effectively, carbohydrate must be present because fat burns in a carbohydrate flame. Ketosis, a metabolic process that occurs when the body does not have enough carbohydrates for energy. The liver metabolizes fatty acids to produce ketones as a replacement energy source. ISSA running technique and programming 238 when there is a lack of carbohydrate, the product of fatty acid breakdown, namely, a metabolic intermediate called acetyl-CoA, is diverted into forming ketones in the liver, causing a condition known as ketosis. This cause is the blood to become acidic, which impairs a person's ability to run. Ketosis is characterized by low blood insulin, hypoglycemia, an increased perception of effort, fatigue, and in extreme cases dizziness. The depletion of glycogen also is an increase in amino acid protein metabolism and an associated increase in blood and muscle ammonia, which can be toxic to muscle cells. Carbohydrate, not fat, is muscle's preferred fuel during exercise. That's why it's such a threat to our health when we run out of it. Not only does low blood glucose and glycogen depletion lead to ketosis, it also compromises immune function. Although research has shown that diets low in carbohydrate can lead to short-term weight loss, they cannot be maintained permanently. Although we use both fat and carbohydrate for energy when we run, these two fuels provide that energy on a sliding scale. As we increase our running pace, the contribution from fat decreases, while the contribution from carbohydrate increases. The intensity and duration of the activity is the primary determinant of how much of each fuel we use. This is where people often make a critical mistake when it comes to fat burning. Because more fat is used at low intensities of exercise, it is often assumed that low-intensity exercise is best for burning fat. Even manufacturers of cardio equipment put fat-burning zones on their front panels. Although it's true that the slower we run, the more our muscles rely on fat compared to carbohydrate, the rate of energy use, the number of calories burned per minute, is lower. At faster running speeds, both the rate of energy use and the total number of calories expended are much greater, such that the absolute amount of fat used is also greater. Therefore, the rate of overall energy expenditure, rather than simply the percentage of energy expenditure derived from fat, is very important when it comes to fat loss. Interestingly, when we are aerobically trained, we rely less on carbohydrate and more on fat as a fuel source when we run. This happens because we increase our muscles' ability to use fat by building up its metabolic machinery, and in so doing, spare our limited supply of carbohydrate. Since a low supply of carbohydrate is threatening, our bodies adapt to running so it can rely more on fat, thereby delaying the use of carbohydrate and assuaging the threat. When first beginning a running program, however, the body is very inefficient, relying more heavily on carbohydrate as a fuel source until the body learns to use fat. Incidentally, our muscles are not the only organ of our bodies threatened by running out of carbohydrate, so is our brain. The brain relies on a steady supply of glucose for optimal function. Post-exercise metabolism, as it's been discerned, body fat is not the primary source of energy during running. Instead, the fat from adipose tissue underneath our skin is lost during the hours after we run as we recover. All of the things that our bodies have to do to recover and recreate balance after running require energy. That energy comes primarily from fat. And the amount of fat transported and used after our run depends in part on the intensity during the run. Following high-intensity running, more fat from adipose tissue is transported to the muscles, and muscles use fat at a faster rate compared to following low-intensity running. So not only does running increase metabolic rate when we're running, it remains elevated for hours afterward as our bodies recover from the run, burning more calories even while sitting at our desk. This is referred to as EPOC, excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. By tinkering with their running, people can burn more calories during and after their runs. As they become more fit, they recover faster, so their post-workout metabolic rate returns to its resting level sooner. Although some of the research comparing post-workout metabolic rates between trained and untrained people is a bit contradictory due to difference in research methods, most research has shown that post-workout metabolic rate is elevated longer in untrained people. Deconditioned people take longer to recover from a run. Although the elevation in metabolism after their runs helps people burn more calories, the elevated metabolism during their workouts, which is much higher than afterward, has a greater impact on calorie burn and subsequent weight loss. Weight loss research, although the diet industry is a multi-billion-dollar per year industry, research shows that diet plus exercise provides greater weight loss than diet alone, both initially and over the long term. Also, exercise, when combined with diet, maintains or, in the case of strength training, increases fat-free mass. In a study from the National Runners and Walkers Health Studies series, the world's largest and longest running series of studies on the health benefits of running and walking, researchers charted the running habits and body weight of 3,973 men and 1,444 women who quit running, 270 men and 146 women who started running, and 420 men and 153 women who remained sedentary during 7.5 years. They found that body weight and intra-abdominal fat decreased in the people who started running and increased in the people who stopped running, with the change is proportional to the change in the amount they ran. In other words, the more the previously sedentary people ran, the greater the decrease in body weight and intra-abdominal fat. Conversely, the more the runners backed off on how much they ran, the more their body weight and intra-abdominal fat increased. Any runner who has ever been injured and can't run knows how easy and quick it is to put on weight. Running is one of the best ways to keep the weight off. In another study, 41,508, 2 female runners were divided into groups based on their age and the number of miles they ran per week. Compared with those who ran less than 10 miles per week, those who averaged over 40 miles per week had 10% lower body mass index weight divided by squared height. The most common value used to determine obesity, 8% lower waist circumference, 7% lower hip circumference, and 4% lower chest circumference. In every age group, the greater the number of miles run per week, the lower the body mass index and chest, waist, and hip circumferences. The amount of running that is necessary to lose weight depends on many factors, not the least of which is the number of calories consumed on a daily basis. Apart from eating, research shows that more than 250 minutes of aerobic exercise per week is needed for significant weight loss and for maintenance of weight after weight loss. This is greater than the general health recommendations of 150 minutes or more of deliberate exercise at moderate intensity for the average adult. Research also shows that interventions such as educational and counseling sessions with people who seek to lose weight, group workouts, and supervised workouts with a trainer are more effective for weight loss. Running strategies for burning calories. There are many strategies a running coach can employ with clients to help them utilize running as a weight loss tool. These include running more miles, running for longer durations, running shorter distance, is at a faster pace utilizing intervals, running more than once a day, varying the type of running training executed. Run more miles, adding more miles to the week, is probably the easiest and most obvious way to burn more calories. By running 5 to 10 more miles per week, a person will burn an extra 550 to 1,100 calories per week. Since fat is burned aerobically, the cellular adaptations to running more weekly miles enhance the muscle's ability to conserve carbohydrate and rely on fat as fuel, so people become better fat-burning machines. When we run, we create a demand by the muscles for oxygen. In response to that demand, specific physiological change is occurred to increase the supply of oxygen to match the demand. For example, running more weekly miles increase is the amount of hemoglobin inside the red blood cells, which transports oxygen through the blood vessels. The more hemoglobin in the blood, the greater the vessel's oxygen-carrying capability. We also create a larger network of capillaries. The more capillaries around the muscle fibers, the more oxygen we can provide to our muscles. Once inside your muscles, oxygen is used by the mitochondria, microscopic energy factories that contain the enzymes involved in aerobic metabolism to produce ATP. Running increase is the amount of mitochondria in the muscles, so we can use more oxygen and produce more ATP. Together, all of these physiological and biochemical change enable a person to run faster and farther, to run more miles per week. Add 1 mile to each of the person's daily runs each week for 3 weeks before backing off for a recovery week. After a recovery week, continue to add miles or time in the same manner. Longer, do 1 long run per week that is significantly longer than any other runs during the week. Long runs are great calorie-burning workouts. Remember that each mile run, regardless of the pace, burns about 110 calories for a person of average weight. So a 10-mile run burns about 1,100 calories. Pace only matters if we think of running in terms of time rather than distance. The faster a person runs, the more miles they'll cover in a set amount of time, which will burn more calories. For every liter of oxygen consumed, about 5 calories are burned. Although we consume more oxygen when we run faster, we also cover the distance in less time, so the number of calories expended remains the same. It is also understood that in general, women burn fewer calories per mile than do men. Since women typically weigh less than men, it costs more oxygen to transport a heavier person. The longer a person runs, the more and longer their metabolic rate is elevated afterward. One study found that walking at 70% of maximal aerobic capacity for 60 minutes resulted in a higher post-workout metabolic rate than walking at the same intensity for 20 or 40 minutes. Also, the longer people walked, the longer it took for their metabolic rate to return to pre-exercise levels, taking 2, 3.5, and 7.5 hours following the 20, 40, and 60-minute exercise bouts. In another study, post-workout metabolic rate more than doubled when the amount of time people exercised at 70% of their maximal aerobic capacity increased from 30 to 45 minutes and increased more than 5-fold after exercising for 60 minutes. Run shorter and faster. When people first start a running program, any running pace is hard. When they get fit, however, they increase their range of paces at which they can run. They'll have slow paces, moderate paces, fast paces, and paces so tough they'll feel like they're tethered to a champion runner. When someone gets to the point at which fitness is improving, start playing with some faster speeds. When they pick up the pace, they'll cover more miles in the same amount of time, which burns more calories. And like longer runs, faster runs burn more calories after the run is over because the post-workout metabolic rate is elevated due to the body's need to recover. In one study, people who cycled at 75% of their maximal aerobic capacity for 20 minutes burned more calories after their workout compared to after cycling at 50% of their maximal aerobic capacity for 30 or 60 minutes. Another study compared metabolic rates following two equal calorie-burning workouts, a short-duration, high-intensity workout and a long-duration, low-intensity workout. The researchers found that the high-intensity workout resulted in a higher post-workout metabolic rate than the low-intensity workout. RUN intervals. A great way to run shorter and faster is interval training, during which periods of faster running to get the heart pumping are alternated with periods of slower jogging to recover. Interval training is a fast and potent way to get fit and lose weight because a greater amount of intense work can be accomplished when the work is interspersed with periods of recovery. RUN twice a day. An advanced weight loss strategy. Running twice a day allows an increase in daily and weekly mileage over what a person normally runs, which increases the number of calories burned. Although it takes more time out of one's day to run twice, physically and psychologically, it's easier to run 2 miles in the morning and 4 miles in the evening than it is to run 6 miles all at once. Splitting a run into 2 shorter runs also results in 2 separate elevations in post-workout metabolic rate, which gives a person 2 opportunities to burn more calories during the day. Research shows that 2 workouts a day is not just effective for burning calories during the workouts, they are also good for burning calories afterward. One study had women run for 50 minutes at 70% VO2max one day and twice for 25 minutes at the same intensity another day. Another study had men cycle for 30 minutes at 70% VO2max one day and twice for 15 minutes at the same intensity another day. Both studies found that the combined increase in post-workout metabolic rate was higher after the 2 workouts compared to after the single workout. By running twice per day, we get 2 metabolic bangs for our buck. Of course, not everyone should run twice per day every day. Few people have time for that. But it's worth having your client try a couple of times each week once their body adapts to running. If they don't want to run twice a day, suggest doing some other exercise. For example, they can run 2 or 3 miles in the morning and do either another cardio workout or resistance workout in the evening. Vary workouts as our bodies get used to doing something, they become efficient at it, we adapt. Although beginner runners initially burn a lot of calories when starting to run, they burn fewer calories to do the same workout as their bodies habituate to it. With training and adaptation, running economy improves, which is a good thing to become a better runner, but not so good if we want to burn as many calories as we can on each run. To be a better weight loser, it's better to be as uneconomical as possible so we consume more oxygen and burn more calories. One way to minimize improvements in economy to burn more calories every mile is to vary workouts. Don't have clients run the same distance in the same place at the same pace every day. Instead, have your clients vary the speeds and distances and terrain of their runs. Some days run slowly, some days run fast, some days run long, some days run hills. The more varied their runs, the more calories they'll burn because the body has not adapted to the new training and is, therefore, less economical in doing said training. ISSA running technique and programming 244 eating to lose weight. A sound diet, including macronutrients and micronutrients, is important to attain and maintain a healthy weight, reduce the risk of chronic disease and promote overall health. For runners, good nutrition is also essential for optimal performance. Adequate nutrition provides fuel for training and competition, helps to avoid injuries and illness, maximize performance, and assists in recovery from workouts. Eating well may not guarantee running success, but an unbalanced diet will most certainly undermine a person's training and competitive performance. Because running burns so many calories, the number of calories that runners need to maintain energy balance is significantly higher than for people who don't run. Restricting intake is never the way to become a better runner. To best fuel for running, the body must have adequate stores of the macronutrients used for energy. To ensure that the body has adequate stores, a runner must eat and drink an adequate amount of calories each day. A person's age, weight, running and non-running activity level, training conditions, and resting metabolic rate all influence how many calories are needed each day. Energy balance is critical for running success, but also for overall health. Energy balance occurs when the amount of energy from food, fluids, and supplements consumed equals the amount of energy from resting metabolism, physical activity, and digestion of food expended. Failure to maintain adequate dietary intake can quickly result in chronic fatigue, dehydration, increased risk for illness and injuries, and for women, menstrual disturbances and bone and muscle loss. But what if someone is trying to lose weight? Their energy needs to be unbalanced, since they need to expend more than they consume. Interestingly, research and empirical evidence show that exercise alone is not effective for weight loss. Since running increases appetite, people tend to eat more to offset the calories they've expended. And it's so easy to get the calories right back after completing a workout. The 30 minutes it takes the average person to run 3 miles and burn 300 calories can be negated in just a few seconds with a handful of pretzels. To lose weight, a person needs to consume enough calories to maintain his or her resting metabolic rate and meet the recommended daily value for all the essential nutrients, but less than what is being expended through running and other forms of physical activity. A person must have a caloric deficit by the end of every day, and that deficit means the person will likely be hungry at least some of the time. To limit the time spent hungry while cutting calories, people should eat nutrient-dense foods that make them feel full and eat small meals during the day to avoid a hungry, empty stomach. The best weight loss strategy is to develop a complete workout program that focuses on running and other forms of exercise to burn lots of calories, strength training to maintain or even increase lean muscle mass, and a specific calorie-controlled nutrient-dense nutrition program. Macronutrients are those that are necessary in larger quantities in the diet. Carbohydrate, protein, and fat all support critical functions in the body, and no single macronutrient should be eliminated in a well-rounded diet. Carbohydrate general recommendation 2.7, 4.5 grams/pound body weight 55, 70% daily calories 35, 45% daily calories for weight loss. Carbohydrate is a runner's best friend. To find out why, we have to go way back, all the way back to the time life on Earth began. A long time ago, before we were born, the atmosphere of Earth is thought to have contained little or no oxygen. So organisms had to develop an anaerobic non-oxygen-using way of producing energy. Since carbohydrate can be broken down without oxygen, organisms relied on carbohydrate as a primary metabolic substrate. The metabolic pathway in which glucose is broken down in the absence of oxygen, glycolysis, is a central metabolic pathway and is present, at least in part, in all organisms. Even today, carbohydrate is the muscle's preferred source of fuel when we run or for any deliberate activity for that matter. When muscles run out of carbohydrate, deplete glycogen, they don't perform well, and the running pace dramatically slows. Muscles respond to the low carbohydrate levels by synthesizing and storing more than what had previously been present, a process largely controlled by the hormone insulin. In order to run at a high intensity, prevent hypoglycemia, low blood sugar when running, refuel muscles, and strengthen the immune system, people need to eat enough carbs. Over many months and years of running, muscles will become better at using fat for energy during slower runs, but we need carbs, especially when first starting a running program. The body's store of carbohydrate is relatively limited and can be acutely manipulated on a daily basis by our dietary intake or even by a single run. Glycemic index, a system that ranks foods on a scale of 1-100 based on their effect on blood sugar levels. Simple carbohydrates. Carbohydrates with short chains of glucose like monosaccharides and disaccharides that are broken down quickly and impact blood sugar relatively fast. Complex carbohydrates. Carbohydrates made of longer chains of glucose like polysaccharides that are broken down more slowly and have a slower, more prolonged impact on blood glucose levels. ISSA running technique and programming 246. Despite what the media portrays, sugar is not inherently bad. When you consume carbohydrate, the concentration of insulin in your blood rises, which triggers the transportation of that carbohydrate glucose from your blood into cells. It is then that glucose's fate is determined. If people eat more carbohydrate than their bodies need for energy, which is easy to do when eating a lot of sugar, the excess glucose is either stored as glycogen in muscles and liver or as body fat. Which of those two fates is chosen depends on how full the glycogen stores are, which depends on how much a person runs. The amount of carbohydrate runners consume should fluctuate in accordance with how much they run. The more they run, the more carbohydrate they need. During the weeks people run less, they should consume less carbohydrate, especially if they're trying to lose weight. Although all carbohydrate can fuel a runner's body, not all carbohydrate contributes equally to a nutritional diet. The glycemic index is a valuable way to assess how quickly a food will impact blood sugar and with what intensity. The glycemic index is heavily based on the complexity of the carbohydrate, and the higher the glycemic index rating, the greater the impact on blood sugar levels the food has. Simple carbohydrates are shorter chains of glucose and are broken down and affect blood sugar levels quickly, where complex carbohydrates are longer chains of glucose that take longer to break down and impact blood sugar levels. Figure 8.1 The glycemic index of common foods protein general recommendation 0.5s 0.7 gram/pound body weight recreational runners 0.6 0.9 gram/pound body weight competitive runners 15-20% of daily calories 20-35% daily calories for weight loss. When we run, there is constant tissue construction breakdown and repair occurring. The protein we consume in food is broken down into amino acids, the metaphorical bricks that are used to 1. Repair muscles of the microscopic damage they incur from running workouts 2. Build new functional proteins and cells that make us fitter and healthier, like mitochondria, enzymes, red blood cells, and antibodies. And 3. Build transport proteins that move molecules from one place to another, like albumin, which transports fatty acids to the muscles and liver for oxidation when blood sugar is low. The amino acids from the protein we eat are so important for building proteins that they can't supply energy for the actual act of running, leaving that responsibility to carbohydrate and fat. Protein contributes only about 5% of the running fuel. However, if muscle glycogen stores are low, protein will be utilized to pick up the slack and can contribute up to 15% of the energy used. One of the benefits of eating protein is that it makes people feel fuller and thus can help to control appetite. If people lack protein in their diet, not only are they likely to feel hungry more often, they are more likely to experience decreased muscle mass, a suppressed immune system, increased risk of injury, and chronic fatigue. Runners at risk of insufficient protein intake include those on a very low-calorie or vegetarian or vegan diet. Low-calorie diets put all nutrients at risk for being insufficient, and plant proteins are less well digested than our animal proteins. Research has shown that diets that contain 0.4 gram per pound of body weight per day are effective for weight and fat loss when cutting calories to lose weight, while higher protein diets that contain 0.5 to 0.7 gram per pound of body weight per day and include at least 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal provide improvements in appetite, body weight management, and cardiometabolic risk factors. A well-balanced vegetarian or vegan diet can supply enough protein as long as the protein source is varied and enough calories are consumed during the day. Fat 20% a 5% of daily calories. The evolution of a large brain has had important implications for the nutritional biology of our species. The brain is the body's Ferrari. It's an expensive organ to maintain. humans expend a much larger share of their resting energy budget on brain metabolism than other primates or non-primate mammals. Where do we get the energy to support our brains? From high-energy fat. Research on the diets of primates shows that the high cost of a large human brain is supported in part by diets that are rich in fat. Greater brain size also appears to have consequence for human body composition, particularly when we are young. Human infants have more body fat than the infants of other mammals, which enables their brains to grow by having a ready supply of stored energy. Interestingly, when dietary fat is not readily available, human infants and toddlers preserve their body fat by stunting their body's linear growth and even increase the amount of fat they store so the brain has enough for itself. From an evolutionary perspective, the increased consumption of because fat supplies more than twice the number of calories per gram compared to carbohydrate and protein. It provides a concentrated calorie source to give us energy. Fat also helps to produce hormones, is an important component of cell membranes, contributes to nerve function, and carries the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K into the cells of the body. Micronutrients for runners. Micronutrients are just as important as macronutrients. Women's micronutrient needs are different than men's, due in part to the menstrual cycle, and difference is in bone density between the sexes. A common problem among women runners is inadequate caloric consumption to match the caloric expenditure of running, especially when trying to lose weight, which puts many female runners at risk of nutrient deficiencies that can affect their health and their running performance. Some important micronutrients any runner should ensure they consume adequate amounts of include calcium, vitamin D, iron, B vitamins, antioxidants. Chapter 8, Running for Weight Loss. Calcium 1000 mg/day, 1200 plus mg/day. Calcium is essential for bone health. It prevents bone loss and reduces fracture risk. When calcium intake is inadequate to offset the body's calcium needs, calcium is stolen from bones to maintain its level in the blood, which contributes to osteoporosis. The body absorbs calcium and most vitamins and minerals better if it's obtained through food rather than a supplement. Good sources of calcium are dairy products, including milk, yogurt, and cheese, as well as dark green leafy vegetables such as spinach, kale, and broccoli. Other sources include canned salmon and fortified foods such as orange juice, breads, and cereals. If taking a calcium supplement, take it with meals in dosage, is of 500 milligrams or less throughout the day to enhance absorption. 600 international units/day, 800 to 1000 international units/day. Vitamin D aids absorption of calcium and increase is bone resorption to provide calcium from old bone to make new bone. Research has shown relationships between vitamin D intake and cancer prevention, increased immunity, and the prevention of diabetes. Vitamin D is produced when skin is directly exposed to the sun, and the sunlight reacts with cholesterol. Although sunscreen is important for skin cancer prevention, it also blocks the chemical reaction of the sun on the skin. Age, geographical location, time of year, and duration of sun exposure all affect skin production of vitamin D. Older runners have higher requirements of vitamin D because the skin is less able to synthesize vitamin D from the sun. Because dietary sources of vitamin D are limited to fortified foods and fatty fish, a vitamin D3 supplement is the best way to ensure an adequate intake of vitamin D if it's lacking in the diet. Iron is an essential component of hemoglobin and myoglobin, the proteins that transport oxygen in the blood and muscles, respectively. Iron deficiency causes anemia, which can occur in men, but is more common among women runners because women lose iron every month during their periods. Anemia, which can result in fatigue, poor recovery, and subpar performance, can occur from diminished dietary iron intake, excessive iron losses, or both. Running also increases iron deficiency through losses in sweat and through breakdown of red blood cells at the feet known as hemolysis from running a lot on hard surfaces. The most readily absorbable forms of iron are in animal foods, such as red meat and dark poultry. Other good sources of iron include dried fruit, dark greens, beans, whole grains, and soy foods. Consuming vitamin C along with iron enhances iron absorption. Many runners with anemia, including vegetarians who may be at higher risk, need an iron supplement, a protein in red blood cells that carries oxygen to the body tissues and carbon dioxide to the lungs. Myoglobin, a protein found in skeletal and cardiac muscle that delivers oxygen to the muscle cells. B vitamins, the B-complex vitamins, specifically thiamine, riboflavin, B6, and niacin, are involved in metabolism and the breakdown of the macronutrients. Vitamin B12 and folate, which are frequently low in female runners' diets, are required for the production of red blood cells, protein synthesis, and tissue repair and maintenance. Deficiency of vitamin B12 or folate can cause anemia and, as a result, reduced endurance. Good sources of B-complex vitamins include fortified cereals, pork, ham, tuna, yogurt, milk, chicken, salmon, turkey, bananas, and ground beef. Clams, oysters, beef liver, and chicken liver are exceptionally good dietary sources of B12. Good sources of folate include broccoli, spinach, pinto and black beans, and enriched spaghetti. Antioxidants vitamin C7, a 5 mg/day vitamin E20, 2.4 international units/day vitamin C and E, the antioxidant nutrients, play important roles in protecting muscle cell membranes from oxidative damage. Long-term running can produce a constant oxidative stress on the muscles and other cells, predisposing them to damage. Because running increase is oxygen consumption 10 to 20 times that of rest. Runners at the greatest risk for low antioxidant intakes are those following a low-fat diet, restricting calories, or limiting dietary intakes of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Despite the antioxidant supplements so heavily advertised to runners, there is little evidence that antioxidant supplements enhance physical performance. The richest sources of vitamin C include citrus fruits and their juices, tomatoes and tomato juice, potatoes, green peppers, and green leafy vegetables. Good sources of vitamin E include meat, chicken, fish, nuts, seeds, vegetable oil, and products made from vegetable oil, such as margarine and salad dressing.